You know those moments? The ones that hit you like a physical blow, even though nothing actually touched you? That's exactly how it felt the day I found that voice message. It wasn't meant for me, not in a million years, but it irrevocably altered the landscape of my life, the way a seismic shift changes a coastline. It started innocently enough, as most betrayals often do. A typical Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the most exciting thing on the agenda was deciding between instant coffee and brewing a fresh pot. I was working from home, a freelance graphic designer, and my daughter, Clara, was at school. My phone buzzed, indicating a new voicemail. I glanced at it, a number I didn't recognize. I usually let those go to spam, but something, a flicker of intuition perhaps, made me open it. And there it was. Not a number, but Clara's name, attached to a voice message icon. Odd. She never left voicemails. She'd text, or just call back. My heart gave a little flutter of worry. Was she okay? Did she need something? I clicked play, my thumb hovering over the speaker icon, ready to bring it to my ear. But the first word stopped me cold, freezing my hand in midair. It wasn't a greeting, not to me. It was a hushed, almost conspiratorial whisper, "Mom isn't going to believe this." My blood ran cold. Mom isn't going to believe this. The words echoed in my head, a chilling premonition. I knew, instantly, it wasn't meant for me. It was meant for someone else, likely a friend. She must have accidentally called me, thinking she was calling someone else, and then left a voicemail without realizing. A pit formed in my stomach, a heavy, nauseating sensation. My first instinct was to delete it. To pretend I never heard it. To give her the privacy she deserved. But the second, stronger instinct, born of a mother's primal fear and a sudden, sharp prick of suspicion, compelled me to keep listening. I lowered the phone slightly, the sound spilling into the quiet of my living room. Clara's voice, usually bright and full of a teenager's boundless energy, was strained, almost breathless. "He actually did it, Sarah. He actually signed the papers. And Mom has no idea. She's going to flip. He actually signed the papers." "The papers? What papers?" My mind raced, frantically searching for context, but coming up empty. And then the next line, delivered with a mix of awe and a touch of something darker, something I couldn't quite place, solidified the dread. "Dad is so good. He convinced her it was for tax purposes. Can you believe it?" My breath hitched. "Dad is so good. He convinced her it was for tax purposes." My husband, Mark. My Mark. The man I'd built a life with for 20 years. The man I trusted implicitly. Tax purposes? What on earth was she talking about? A dizzying wave of nausea washed over me. I pressed my palm to my mouth, trying to stifle a gasp, trying to make sense of the nonsensical. The message continued, a torrent of whispered details that systematically dismantled the edifice of my life, brick by carefully laid brick. "So, when they move ahead with the big purchase, everything will be in his name, right? And she won't even know what hit her. He said he's going to wait until after the trip to tell her. The big purchase. Everything in his name. The trip." Each phrase was a stab, sharp and precise. The big purchase could only refer to the small winery we had been dreaming of buying. It was our retirement plan, our joint passion project, years of saving and planning poured into it. We'd been looking at a particular vineyard for months, finally close to making an offer. And the trip, that was our upcoming anniversary cruise, a celebration of our 2 decades together. It was supposed to be a romantic getaway, a chance to reconnect before diving into the intensity of the winery venture. Clara's voice, a child's voice yet now carrying the weight of a terrible secret, continued, oblivious to the fact that her mother was listening, her world imploding around her. "He's even got the lawyer on board. She thinks she's getting a great deal, a legitimate tax advantage. He said it's all perfectly legal, just, not what she thinks. He said it's setting up for the future. His future, I guess." A small, bitter laugh escaped her lips. That laugh. It wasn't a malicious laugh, not exactly. More like the nervous, slightly thrilled laugh of someone witnessing something scandalous, something they shouldn't be a part of, but couldn't help but be fascinated by. And the lawyer. Helen. My friend. Or so I thought. The woman who'd handled our wills, our various legal needs for years. The betrayal was a multi-layered cake of poison. I sat there, frozen, the phone still playing the silent aftermath of Clara's accidental confession. The digital silence was deafening. My hands began to tremble. This wasn't just a miscommunication. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a calculated, deliberate plan. A plan to cut me out, to take everything. Mark and I had built our lives on shared dreams. We started from scratch, two ambitious kids with big ideas and even bigger hearts. He was an architect, I was a designer. We complemented each other, professionally and personally. We'd weathered financial storms, family crises, the usual bumps and bruises of a long marriage. We'd celebrated successes, mourned losses, and raised Clara together, instilling in her the values of honesty, integrity, and loyalty. Or so I thought. We'd always been transparent about finances. We had a joint account for household expenses, and separate savings for our individual ventures, but the bulk of our wealth, especially what was earmarked for the winery, was considered ours. Jointly earned, jointly saved, jointly owned. The winery wasn't just an investment, it was the embodiment of our shared vision for a slower, more fulfilling life. We'd spent countless evenings poring over blueprints, sampling wines, even volunteering at local vineyards to learn the ropes. This wasn't just money, it was our future, our identity. And now, according to my daughter's innocent yet damning voice message, it was all to be Mark's. His future. The initial shock slowly gave way to a cold, hard anger. My heart was pounding, not with fear anymore, but with a fierce, protective rage. How could he? How could he do this to me, to us, to everything we'd built? And Clara, my sweet, empathetic Clara. How could she be complicit? My daughter, my flesh and blood, privy to this elaborate deception and not say a word? The pain of her involvement was almost worse than Mark's betrayal. It felt like a betrayal from within, a poison in my own blood. I spent the next hour replaying the message, dissecting every word, every inflection. The pieces of the puzzle began to click into place, forming a horrifying picture. Recent conversations with Mark, seemingly innocuous at the time, now glowed with sinister intent. His sudden insistence on using his lawyer, Helen, for the winery purchase, even though I had a trusted business attorney. His vague answers about why the paperwork was taking so long. His uncharacteristic secrecy about the details of the offer. He'd brushed off my questions with a charming smile and a reassuring squeeze of my hand. Don't worry your pretty head, honey, I've got it all handled. Just a few technicalities. Technicalities, indeed. The realization hit me with the force of a tidal wave, I had been living a lie. The man I loved, the father of my child, was meticulously planning to strip me of my financial security, our shared dreams, and perhaps, ultimately, our marriage, all under the guise of tax advantages and future planning. My trust, once an unshakable fortress, crumbled into dust. That night, Mark came home, whistling a cheerful tune, oblivious to the silent storm raging within me. He kissed me, asked about my day, talked about his. Each word felt like a lie, each touch a violation. I smiled, I nodded, I even managed to cook dinner. But inside, I was a coiled spring, vibrating with a desperate need for answers, for justice, for a way to untangle myself from this horrifying web. I couldn't confront him immediately. I knew I needed a plan. I needed proof. The voice message was my smoking gun, but I needed more concrete evidence, something that would stand up in court. And I needed to figure out what to do about Clara. The thought of confronting her, of asking her why, twisted my gut. Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own home. I started with Helen, the lawyer. I made an appointment under the pretext of updating my own will. I watched her carefully, looking for any flicker of guilt, any telltale sign that she was complicit in this scheme. She was professional, charming, and seemed genuinely happy to see me. It was chilling. I also began to surreptitiously check Mark's computer, his office, anything I could access. It felt dirty, invasive, but the alternative, blindness, was far worse. And then I found it. Tucked away in a hidden folder on his hard drive, disguised as an old project file, were drafts of documents. A preliminary agreement for the winery, indeed solely in his name. Correspondence with Helen discussing the tax loophole, a loophole that, upon closer inspection, was nothing more than a legal maneuver to transfer ownership and control solely to him. And a prenuptial agreement, dated 3 months prior, designed to protect his future assets in the event of a divorce. A prenuptial agreement. After 20 years of marriage. That was the final, devastating blow. It wasn't just about the winery. It was about everything. He was planning to leave me, to divorce me, and to do it in a way that left me financially devastated. My world didn't just crack, it shattered. I felt a visceral, gut-wrenching pain, like being physically disemboweled. The man I had loved, the father of my child, had been systematically planning my demise, emotionally and financially. My entire life, our entire life, had been a facade. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming silently down my face. The anger was still there, but it was now laced with an overwhelming sense of grief. Grief for the marriage I thought I had, for the future I believed was ours, for the innocent trust one had placed in the man I loved. And the profound heartbreak of Clara's involvement. How could she watch her father do this? How could she be okay with it? The sun rose, painting the sky with a gentle, hopeful hue that felt utterly incongruous with the desolation in my soul. But as the light filled the room, something shifted within me. The grief, the anger, the pain, they began to coalesce into something new, something powerful. Determination. I wasn't going to be a victim. I wasn't going to let him steal my future, my dignity. I called a lawyer that morning, not Helen, but a fierce, no-nonsense divorce attorney known for her tenacity. I laid out the whole story, trembling as I spoke, playing Clara's voice message for her. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Sarah, listened intently, her expression hardening with each detail. "This is unconscionable," she said, her voice firm. "And we have enough to fight this. More than enough." The next few weeks were a blur of hushed phone calls, clandestine meetings, and the careful gathering of more evidence. I learned to wear a mask, to project an air of normalcy when Mark was around. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, but I held on to the image of the life I deserved, the life I would fight for. Clara was the hardest part. I avoided looking at her too closely, avoided engaging in anything more than superficial conversation. The hurt of her complicity was a raw wound. But I knew I had to address it, eventually. The confrontation came, not in a dramatic movie scene, but in a quiet, sterile conference room. Mark, Helen, Sarah, and I. He walked in, radiating his usual charm, a slightly puzzled look on his face, as if he couldn't quite fathom why we were all there. The surprise on his face when Sarah began to lay out the evidence, piece by damning piece, was almost comical. The drafts of the sole ownership winery agreement, the prenuptial agreement, the emails with Helen. And then, the ultimate trump card, Clara's voice message. Sarah played it. The sound of my daughter's hushed, breathless voice filled the room, echoing with the terrible truth. Mark's face, which had been slowly draining of color, turned ashen. He looked at me, a flicker of fear, then a searing hatred in his eyes. He stammered, tried to deny, tried to explain it away as a misunderstanding, a misguided attempt to protect our assets. Protect whose assets, Mark? I asked, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding like a drum. Mine? Or yours? Helen, meanwhile, looked utterly devastated. She claimed she had been misled by Mark, that he had presented the tax purposes as a legitimate strategy for our joint benefit, manipulating her trust as he had mine. Whether it was true or not, I didn't care. Her complicity, however unwitting, was still a betrayal. The climax wasn't a shouting match, but a quiet unraveling. Mark, caught in his own web of deceit, had no recourse. The evidence was irrefutable. The legal battle was swift, brutal, and ultimately, victorious for me. With the evidence of his deliberate financial fraud and the prenuptial agreement he'd tried to sneak through, the court ruled decisively in my favor. I received not only my rightful share of our assets, including the winery, but also a substantial settlement for emotional distress and punitive damages. The biggest confrontation, however, was with Clara. Weeks after the legal proceedings had begun, after Mark had moved out, I sat her down. She was quiet, withdrawn, the vibrant light in her eyes dimmed. "Clara," I began, my voice thick with emotion, "I heard your voice message to Sarah." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock and immediate shame. "Mom, She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Why, Clara?" I asked, the words a raw ache in my throat. "Why didn't you tell me? How could you let him do this?" She looked up, her face tear-streaked. He said it was for my future, too. He said you didn't understand money, that you were too emotional. He said if I just kept quiet, we'd all be better off, eventually. He said it was a secret, a game. And if I told you, he'd be really angry, and it would mess everything up." Her voice was a broken whisper. "He made me promise." My heart broke for her, for the impossible position he had put her in, for the manipulation he had inflicted on our own child. "Clara," I said, reaching for her hands, "he lied to you. He used you. What he was doing wasn't a game, it was a crime. And it was going to hurt me, and in the long run it would have hurt you too." We talked for hours that night, through tears and accusations and eventually, a fragile understanding. She expressed profound remorse, a deep regret for her silence. She was a child caught in a parent's ugly war, manipulated by the person she trusted. It wasn't an easy conversation, and the scars of her complicity will always be there, a shadow between us that we are slowly, painstakingly, working to heal. The resolution didn't come overnight. It was a slow, deliberate process of rebuilding. Mark is out of our lives, the legal entanglements behind me. Helen lost her license. The winery, my winery now, is thriving. I brought in a new business partner, a woman with integrity and a shared passion. It's a place of beauty and hard work, a testament to resilience, a symbol of a future I built for myself. Clara and I are finding our way back to each other. It's not the same as it was, but we're building a new foundation, one based on absolute honesty and open communication. It's messy and sometimes painful, but it's real. We go to therapy together, talking through the trauma, learning to trust again. I look at my life now, a year after that fateful voice message, and I see a landscape irrevocably changed. The old foundations were built on sand, on lies. But the new ones, though forged in fire and pain, are strong, built on truth and self-reliance. I'm stronger, fiercely independent, and I know my worth. The woman who listened to that voice message was naive, trusting to a fault. The woman I am now is wise, resilient, and unapologetically her own. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through, the kind of betrayal that leaves permanent marks. But in breaking, I rebuilt myself into something far more powerful. And I'll never forget what I heard that day, because it was the sound of my old life ending, and my new, truer life, beginning.